Let's clear up health. U.S.'s first gender-affirming care ban in Arkansas struck down by judge. A federal judge has permanently blocked the country's first law banning gender-affirming care for minors, signaling a victory for the LGBTQ+ advocates. The ruling by U.S. District Judge James Moody Jr. on Tuesday says the state of Arkansas violated several sections of the U.S. Constitution when it banned all gender-affirming treatments for people under 18. The 80-page ruling says depriving trans minors of treatments like hormone therapy would cause them irreparable harm, and that delaying care until adulthood would force teens to go through changes inconsistent with their gender identity. The rules read, quote, rather than protecting children or safeguarding medical ethics, the evidence showed that the prohibited medical care improves the mental health and well-being of patients, and that by prohibiting it, the state undermined the interests it claims to be advancing, end quote. The testimony of well-credentialed experts, doctors, and who provide gender-affirming medical care in Arkansas and families that rely on that care directly refute any claim by the state that the act advances an interest in protecting children. Arkansas became the first state in the nation to ban gender-affirming care for trans minors when lawmakers passed Act 626 in 2021. Alabama, Florida, and Indiana have similar laws on the books, all of which are temporarily on hold. One online commentator was especially impressed by the ruling made by the judge in the Indiana case.
I've never heard this perspective on trans rights before, and from a Trump-appointed judge at that. So this week, Judge Patrick Hanlon struck down an Indiana law banning gender-affirming care. He said it was discrimination, but the example he used is genius. Here's the hypothetical. Let's say there is a straight cisgender boy that has gynecomastia, which, by the way, is a totally natural enlargement of male breast tissue. If this happens to a boy, nobody has an issue with this boy undergoing the knife to remove that breast tissue. But God made him that way. Why would he want to remove it? Because it causes anxiety, depression, suicidality. The same factors that are successfully alleviated by gender-affirming care for trans people. The judge also basically said that blocking hormones would be silly. Cisgender, underage females are prescribed anti-androgens all the time to suppress their testosterone levels. Girls naturally have testosterone too, and if they have too much naturally, it causes problems. A lot of the problems are distress by the effects caused by that extra hormone. The judge's point is that if distress is the factor that everybody is trying to solve for, whether you're transgender or cisgender, what is the point of only blocking it for one type of person? It's hysteria. It's discrimination. Just so well stated and poignant and smart. I want to publicly thank the judge for putting his thought and energy into this and not allowing for public sentiment and partisanship to get in the way of clear thinking.
I think this gives us hope.
Yeah.
You know, especially here in Florida, where we're undergoing the same kind of laws that our governor is passing against trans minors and affirming care. If this continues, which it seems to be doing on a lot of these issues that have come up and have been challenged by the courts, there is some hope that we can push this all back. You know, the fear is like, who becomes the next president? What does that mean? You know, how do they react to this and what is the repercussions of it? But at least gives hope, you know, that if it doesn't go to the Supreme Court, that we'll be fine. You know, I don't know what happens if it goes to the Supreme Court currently.
Yeah, and there was a ruling actually today in Florida that struck down the ban on gender-affirming care for folks on Medicaid. Not a total win, but it is a win. And that really allows for there to be some type of precedent set going forward in federal courts on the overarching ban. And this is not, it's not going to stop. I didn't know it would get this bad. Kind of knew a little bit a few years ago when the first ban was introduced and failed, and I had to go up to Tallahassee and I met with the lawmaker Sabatini at the time who introduced that bill, and how his colleagues were like, this is insane, and they threw it out. And then a year later they started introducing these bans again and again and again. And I can only guess what's going to happen in the next session, but those bills will start to be filed in a couple weeks. So we're going to keep our eyes open and pay attention to the upcoming committee weeks in the Florida legislature and what's to come.
But you probably know better than most that the Florida legislature changed the rules to benefit themselves. So they went from saying you can speak for 5 minutes, I don't know the exact time, so you can speak for 30 seconds. That you can speak for 2 weeks on an issue down to 2 days. And then the supermajority just votes on what it wants. So we do need these courts to step in, because I don't trust what will happen, because they're changing all the rules. The governor, technically, according to the state, should be stepping down once he said he was running for president, but because he's got all of his cronies, they, just quickly change the rules.
Change the rules. And so
suit them.
And we know, again, 75 states already, there's already 75 laws already on books, and we're constantly either on hold or banning them. But let's think about how that video that we just saw, how poignant it is. The rule is, they're making laws based off of how a person feels and how a person sees themselves. Nothing about damaging property, nothing about anything like that. So it's truly discriminatory. How do you make a rule? Because I say I feel I am a certain way, you make it a rule to change that I can't live my authentic self. Yeah. How much sense does that make? And I think that's where it all boils down to, why that person said, this is stupid. And I think when you get to the core of all of this is stupid. How do we allow it to get that far? Only because we making up the laws for ourselves, and we say we don't want these people to exist. We don't want their lives to matter. Right. And the other piece of that is, think about our young people who may live in health disparities where they don't already have good health care. They don't already have opportunities for that. And now we're going to now make it even harder for them to truly live. The mental anxiety that pulls on a person is got to be tremendous.
And they're doing it as a distraction thing, because how many people are actually getting these surgeries? Think of the size of our community or our population. How many people are actually transitioning or unhappy? I mean, they've picked on something that's a high topic that everyone reacted to, but in essence, how many people's lives are really every life matters and it's important, but why did they pick on this? Like, they could have picked on anything.
Political theater.
It's political theater. And we're being forced to stand up to protect a group of people that should have just been, being taken care of without an issue. Yeah. And they've made it an issue where it shouldn't have been. It's not affecting that many people.
I give a gigantic applause to all of the young people who are organizing.
Oh my gosh.
Protests.
Yeah.
There's a group of young folks that go up to the Florida Capitol during the session. They hold protests. We were going to the Florida Board of Medicine, which is tasked with really implementing that rule, and they were cruel. And this is happening across the country too. Yeah. And I know there's going to be a lot more actions too. So, and I know folks who are young who can't get that medicine.
Oh my gosh.
Who can't get it.
Yes.
And I think it's great that your generation compared to my generation, which goes back 4 decades, that wasn't even an option. The fact that these kids have the education because of the internet and stuff to be able to get information readily available about thoughts that they have and be able to find it and find like people. I think about people, in the 40s, 50s and before that there was no resources. You were out there thinking, I'm not like everybody else, but how do I live my authentic self? And many people never got that chance or committed suicide or who knows what happened.
So also, too, think about this. They're going into families' homes. They're taking the rights away from the parents who says, you know what, I see my child as being who my child is. And so they're taking away that parent's rights. And again, if we don't pay attention, they're already in our homes by telling women they don't have autonomy of their bodies. They're already in our homes. They're going into people's homes and saying what you can and you can't do.
What happened to getting the government out of our bedrooms?
What happened to that? But yet again, but anybody can go buy a gun and do whatever they want as you want, but you worry about what's happening in my house with my family, my children, taking away the rights my parental rights.
Right. Did anyone see the CNN on Pence? They did their town hall. I saw part of it and then I had to shut it off because I got angry. But he was talking about our parents' rights to do the right thing for their kids, and then they questioned about transgender, and he paused and went, "Well, on that I have to disagree. It's the state's responsibility to make sure that kids are making right decisions." And they said, well, what would you do if a trans kid came to you? I would put my arm on him and tell him I love him, and I put their parents on and say, just relax and wait. Just wait. Wow. And I was thinking, what kind of response is that? But that's the thought. It's crazy.
But that's what's important about this story, because the story is celebrating the fact that finally there's a legal precedent.
Absolutely. This is the first positive story we've had today.
We can now use in other states and transfer.
Amen.
Right. That's the precedent.
Because I can guarantee you they're going to push as far up the ladder as they can to the Supreme Court. But because of this Trump-appointed judges' opinions and ability to think beyond politics and be as common sense and as
He's a legal scholar.
As he is.
Law.
He followed the law as best he could. This is going to be the precedent that's going to allow us to weaken and change everything else.
Because the alternative is, we talked about learning from our history, is young folks were leaving their homes, going to basements, going to attics, and getting those kind of surgeries and not surviving.
Right, behind the
screens. And so what we don't want to happen is we have to learn, we have to support the babies now who are identifying and coming into their own, because the alternative is where we came from, and a lot of our siblings did not survive, and we can't go back to that situation.
What Republicans want.
And that's exactly what they want.
They want dad trans kids. Some people say, oh, you shouldn't say that. No,
but that's what they want.
Why else would you be doing it? You want dad trans kids, you want dad women getting back alley abortions, and they die because you have this religious belief. Type of religion is that, where you believe that people who identify a different way or don't follow your religion deserve to die.
Right.
Religion's evil in so many ways.
Okay.
We are Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only live daily LGBTQ+ evening news show from Happening Out Television Network. In the model of PBS and NPR, we educate, inform, and entertain by supporting the 10 pillars of the LGBTQ+ community, with more than 100,000 a week watching on Roku, Apple Television, and other channels. To keep the stories going, we accept donations with 100% transparency. Stay updated and live authentically with Queer News Tonight.